Welcome to Book Banter with me, your host, Dianne Burckhardt. I hope you will join me every Wednesday as we explore all things to do with, well, books. Let's get on with our show today. Hello, my happy people. Today is August 13th, 2025, and my little extra bits at the beginning and the end today are going to be very short and sweet because there's so much going on. But be sure to stick around to the very end because we have some incredible announcements that I think you're going to love, especially if you're a fan of romance. But for now, let's get right to today's interview because my guest today is just incredible. And I have to tell you that this is going to be an emotionally charged and just an incredibly informational discussion about surrogacy, in vitro fertilization, and how one woman built the family that she'd always dreamed of. So please welcome to Book Banter with Dianne Burckhardt, an incredible author and mother, Alison Beder Solway. Since you have heard a couple of our shows, you know the way that I like to start these episodes is just to have our guests tell everyone who you are and what you do.
My name is Alison Beder Solway, and I am a new author. Prior to writing the book, The Miles We Run, I have been involved in the fitness industry for the past 17 years. I started with group fitness classes, and then I transitioned into personal training. And I have a studio in my home where I see private clients. And then during COVID, I started a fitness platform because people weren't able to go to the gym or see their personal trainers, absfitness.ca, where I have membership all over Canada and the US for strength training workouts for women over 40. And if I could just say, Dianne, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited for this conversation.
This was going to be like the highlight of my day today because I knew this was going to be such an interesting conversation. I have never talked to anybody who had a book about this topic, and I think that it's so relevant. And there are probably a lot of people who are interested in surrogacy but have no idea where to get information or even how to start.
Right. That's very true. Although there is so much more information on surrogacy today than when we went through it 26 years ago. Surrogacy was pretty much shrouded in silence when we were told that I couldn't carry any more children. I had a very challenging pregnancy and birth with our first child. Thank God everything turned out okay, but I was told about a month later, due to a genetic condition I had that I didn't know I had until the challenges of pregnancy for me, that I couldn't carry any more children, and we decided to pursue surrogacy. The internet wasn't what it is today, and today there's so much more information on infertility and the different options if you experience infertility, surrogacy being one of them. There's so much more support in terms of getting help from a mental health standpoint with regards to going through infertility, unlike when we went through it 26 years ago. So much has changed, but so much has stayed the same in terms of there's still a stigma. It's still something that's so challenging to relinquish control and to trust somebody to carry your child for you for 9 months. That's essentially what, I guess I should back up and explain what surrogacy is for those who may not know. But there's two types of surrogacy. There's traditional surrogacy, where there's a genetic connection to the woman carrying the child. That is less frequently used by intended parents. And then there's gestational surrogacy, where there is no genetic connection to the surrogate who's carrying the child. So in our case, we used a gestational surrogate, and they essentially were implanted with my egg and my husband's sperm, which fertilized in a lab, and that's called in vitro fertilization. So there's so many components to working with a surrogate, and it was a very challenging road, as it still is, although much more common and spoken of, especially given so many celebrities that have chosen to use surrogates to carry their children.
And I think one thing is really important that you were speaking about the mental health aspect. That's something that we've been focusing on a lot this season, and even last season, about mental health. That people need to be more open talking about how they deal with big issues in their lives, and trying to decide about surrogacy or not is a big issue.
Yes. My whole life, I knew I wanted 3 children. And I have a very close relationship with my siblings. I have a brother and sister, and my husband is very close with his brothers. And when we were told I couldn't carry anymore, I really couldn't fathom not having any more children and our daughter not having siblings to grow up with. That is something that I desperately wanted for her, as I wanted for myself to have more children. When we started surrogacy and our road to having more babies, I started a journal. And that was so key to helping me cope with the mental upheaval of going through infertility. So our road was not easy. One journal turned into 2, turned into 3. And when we did finally close the chapter to surrogacy, because we were successful 4 years later, I knew I had a story, but I was in the throes of raising 4 children under 6.
Oh,
And yes.
that would make you busy.
And I think that not only did I want to be present for them, I think that I didn't want to relive what I had just lived.
Mhm.
And so I put those journals away. And then about 20 years later, 21 years later now, when I picked up those journals and started to reread them, I had my eldest in university and my 3 boys were at the tail end of high school. It was the right time for me to focus on something that I knew would require a lot of my time. I started rereading these journals, and I knew I had a story, and I knew that I needed to share the story because I knew I am not the only one that has been through this. Infertility affects 1 in 6 couples, and it's so pervasive, and it is still, in a way, seemingly so hard to accept that your body won't do, as a woman, something that it is supposed to. And I knew that I wanted to share my story to help others recognize, especially going through infertility, that they're not alone. Because the only time I didn't feel alone going through surrogacy was really when you would go to the fertility clinics and you would sit with a room filled with women or couples who were going through that exact same thing as you. And you sit there and you can see the desperation that is just emanating throughout the room for everybody. And as sad as it was also empowering that, you weren't alone. I'm so happy that there's so many more resources now, and there's so many more ways to get help in coping and managing going through infertility or going through surrogacy, or even, having your family through an alternative way, because that's what you need to do to have a family. So I read these journals, and it was very cathartic for me, even 21 years later, because I didn't really recognize at the time what I had been through. I didn't process what I had been through, and I certainly didn't grieve the loss properly as to what I had been through, in that grieving the intangible of not being able to carry any more children, and a lot of the issues we faced while we were working with various surrogates.
I'm really fascinated by the fact that you actually journaled during the process and then you went back 20 years later and were going through these to decide if you were going to share the story, because that's actually the same thing that went on with me when I was going through my brain surgeries. I journaled through all of them to deal with the stress,
Right. Wow.
but I just put the journals away and never touched them. We just hit the 20-year anniversary of my last brain surgery. And I thought, okay, now is time to write about it. And I pulled it out and I started reading those journals again. And it was like you were saying that, at that time you didn't properly grieve and you didn't deal with a lot of the things emotionally because you were surviving it.
That's right.
And so now going through that, you can actually process all those feelings. But at the same time, it's like you're reliving all of it again.
Exactly. That's exactly what it was like. It was processing and reliving and almost an out of body experience, in that I couldn't believe what I had actually been through to have the family that I had desperately wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And as with your story, I'm sure just makes you take a second and reflect. And I was so proud of myself. I was
Mm-hmm.
just, the journals initially started out as a keepsake for our future child, just to know the love that we felt for them prior to their conception.
Mm-hmm.
I never started the journals thinking, I'm going to write a book one day.
Yeah.
These were just stream of consciousness for me. And just literally, it was just like vomit of what we were going through on paper.
Mm-hmm.
And I was so thankful that I allowed myself that outlet while we were going through it. And then I was so grateful when I took out those journals and started reading them again and recognizing the strength that I had that I don't think I realized at the time that I did.
What made you decide to take this information and weave your surrogacy in with marathon training? How did the New York City Marathon help you to process your fertility journey?
That's a great question. I've always been a runner. And about the same time, I was transcribing the journals into a Google Doc type form just to get it out of a journal and onto my hard drive.
Mm-hmm.
Was coming up on my 50th birthday. And I wanted to do something really impactful for me for that birthday. And I thought to myself, I'm going to run the New York City Marathon. And COVID kind of derailed those plans until I was 51. And when I signed up for the marathon, my brother, sister, and I, we run together every Saturday morning and have been doing so for the past, I'd say, since COVID. It was like a safe space, something we all did and we could do together and see each other on a weekly basis. So when I decided to sign up for the marathon, I called my brother and he used some choice words and he was like, you're not going to believe this. I just signed up yesterday or a couple days ago. I don't remember exactly. I'm like, what are you talking about? And then I called my sister and I said, you're not going to believe what just happened. She said, well, if you two are doing it, I'm doing it too. So the three of us ran in 2022, the New York City Marathon. We did a lot of our training together and some not. But while I was training for this marathon, and pushing myself greater than I had ever run before. So when I started running more than 13, 14 kilometers, I started to call upon the same qualities that got me through surrogacy and infertility: perseverance, discipline, resilience, patience, hope. All these things that helped me get through infertility helped me cross that finish line in New York City. And I thought to myself, what an unbelievable analogy to pair it with our fertility journey, because most of us will not go through surrogacy and most of us will not run a literal marathon.
Mm-hmm.
But all of us run metaphoric marathons. Nobody has a flat road. And we all understand what it's like to overcome obstacles, hurdles. We all have hills. We all have valleys. We all have downward slants. And just winding roads. So it just made so much sense to me to incorporate that analogy, not from a literal sense, but a sense that people could recognize their own strengths through their own stories in reading my narrative.
That's really powerful.
Thank you.
So you can hear the passion in your voice when you talk about this.
Right, right. Well, I am really passionate about it. And it's funny. At this talk that I gave last week, I get so emotional still about my story.
Hmm.
And I think that I always will, because it's how, like, I brought the most important people in my life into the world. And I think that really resonates with people, whether they have their own children or not, whether they have a blended family, children who are adopted, nieces or nephews that they're close to, stepchildren. I just think that you can resonate with somebody who literally will do anything to achieve their dream.
Hmm.
And it speaks about hope, especially in the way the world is right now. I think we need that hope. Hope really held my hand our entire experience. And I don't know how I was blessed enough to feel that hope, even when I couldn't see it, but it lived within me. And I go through, obviously, our entire experience in the miles we run. And it was a really hard time. It wasn't just about finding the right woman and her getting pregnant and then we had our children. It wasn't easy like that. For some people, not that it's easy, there's not as much struggle because there's struggle with infertility no matter what. But it was a long struggle for us. And we lived through a miscarriage. We finally get pregnant again. And then we have to reduce one of the fetuses because there's something very wrong with it. And just pray that, the other fetus, because it was a twin pregnancy, would survive. And that's my eldest son, Aiden. And just so many variables, trying here in Canada and then finally deciding to go into the US. And it's a story of hope and resilience. And that's why, the subtitle is Lessons from the Arena of Resilience. Lots of lessons.
Speaking of resilience, there was something that you had spoken about before in another interview about losing consciousness during a complicated fertility treatment.
I didn't lose consciousness, but in Canada, 26 years ago, when they would extract your eggs from your ovaries, you were put on special medication to enhance the egg development. So when a woman cycles through her regular menstrual cycle, she drops usually one egg follicle.
Hmm.
When you are looking to do IVF, you are put on medication to enhance the development of as many follicles as possible. So you have a much greater chance once they've extracted them, bringing them into the lab and then fertilizing them with your partner's sperm. And there was no anesthetic in Canada. So my cervix was frozen, although I could feel every single extraction of the follicle where they put in a needle and then they suction it out. And there were times where I would get 30 plus follicles.
Oh,
So it
wow.
was excruciating. And that's one thing that really stuck with me because it was one of the most painful things I've ever endured. I could not understand how there wasn't more pain meds involved because when we went into the States, I didn't feel one thing when they extracted my eggs.
Wow.
So I'm not sure what that process is like. I've heard mixed things about different clinics in Toronto where I am. So some, yes, use anesthetic and others still do not.
Wow. I'm just thinking, I hope you get really good things on Mother's Day.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
that, oh my gosh, the thought of just going through that process, I can't even imagine the pain.
Yeah, it wasn't fun. It was not a fun experience. But then again, you just bear it because you know what this is potentially leading to. So, as bad as the pain is, you're like, it's going to be worth it because ultimately, I pray that a baby is going to come of this.
Hmm.
So, you just do it.
Wow, that's incredible. Now, you've also talked about being an advocate for yourself in the hospital and in fertility settings. Do you ever give advice to other people to help them be their own advocates?
That's a big lesson in the miles we run. Once we were successful in having Aiden, our first born through a surrogate, then I started helping other couples because I felt that I could. When we were told we couldn't carry any more children, I couldn't talk about it with anyone. We didn't tell anybody, only our immediate family.
Hmm.
I felt that for the first 2 years of our surrogacy experience, I went in blind. I just assumed whatever the doctor told us was the way it was, the way it should be. I didn't ask questions. I wasn't curious. I was very naive and ignorant and stupid. And I say that with love, but I wish I had learned my lesson from when I was pregnant with our daughter, when my body was telling me I was not okay, but I had an obstetrician that kept telling me I was. And I didn't listen to my body. I listened to her, and I ended up going into right congestive heart failure
Oh,
at 8 months pregnant. But Hannah was fine, thank God. I wasn't so great, but everything worked out. And I am talking to you right now. So, but after that 2 year stint in Toronto, I took a long, hard look at myself. And I'm not a stupid person. I'm well educated, and I think I found my voice. I think it was missing because I was so scared to use it.
hmm.
And I started asking questions and I started being more curious, and our doctor didn't like that. And we pivoted, we made a change because it wasn't working here. And that's when we decided to go into the US. And I was looking for a partnership with a clinic, not similar to what I had had in Toronto. I wanted to know what was going on. I wanted full transparency at all times. And the lesson I learned there, which has carried me through for the past, let's say 22 or 23 years or so now, no one's going to advocate for you better than you.
Hmm.
If you don't do it for yourself, no one is going to do it for you. And even though there are powers of authority that deserve respect, that doesn't mean that you can't be curious and ask questions in a respectful manner. I think so much of the time, especially when it comes to our health, people are frightened to ask questions, whether it's they don't want to know or they don't think to ask. But I have never made that mistake again, in that I now advocate for myself. And I hope that I've taught my children to advocate for themselves, in everything. If there's a teacher that you're not getting along with, or there's a mark that you don't think you deserved, you go and speak to that professor and find out why. And if you don't agree, you let them know why. And maybe there's a conversation there. Again, always done with respect, but nobody is going to advocate for you better than you will advocate for yourself. And that was a big lesson that I learned, that I wrote about in The Miles We Run.
It sounds like you probably experienced a lot of the same things that I did with doctors, that you got a lot of, I'm the doctor, just do what I tell you to do.
Yes,
Don't ask questions. Don't worry about it. Just trust me.
exactly.
And it's like, it's my life. No, I don't trust you if you're not going to answer my questions.
That is right. And it's unfortunate that it is perceived to be like that more in healthcare than in anything else, because doctors are so wonderful and they're life saving, and nurses as well. But there's nothing wrong with asking questions and defending yourself and making sure that you're comfortable with what's happening and understanding the procedure that you're going through. Again, it's not just related to surrogacy or brain surgery or, a colonoscopy. It's really anything for
Hmm.
yourself to just make sure that your curiosity is properly addressed when you are in a situation that maybe isn't something that you're that familiar with. There's nothing wrong with being curious.
Absolutely. You should always feel comfortable with the person who is treating you and with what they're going to be doing to you.
Yes, 100%.
Now, I find it really interesting that your book, The Miles We Run, has 26.2 chapters.
That is how many miles are in a marathon. So I actually didn't write chapters. Each section is a mile. So we start with mile 1, mile 2, mile 3, all the way to 26.2.
Besides the fact that you have this set up as a marathon, you also do something interesting at the end of your chapters. You have a philosophical question for your readers. Where did that idea come from?
That idea stemmed from me wanting to ensure that the reader was able to reflect on their own stories, their own inner strength, their own resilience. So even though it was my story, I wanted them to take a second or two to just reflect on their own. And I wasn't sure if I was going to leave them in or not, but I worked with an unbelievable editor and she loved them and convinced me to keep them in.
I think that is such an interesting attribute to your book.
Thank you. Thank you. I just think when we read a memoir, we get so caught up in the story that's being told that, again, even though that it's my narrative, I wanted to really make sure that the reader had the opportunity to reflect on their narrative and their story, because I had the opportunity to read my journals and reflect on my strength. And sometimes we just don't take the time to look at what we've overcome in our lives. And I wanted to make sure that whoever reads my book has the opportunity to do so.
Now, you frame running and motherhood as two arenas of resilience. Which felt harder, crossing the marathon finish line or becoming a parent through surrogacy?
That is a great question. The arena of resilience is really living life in the arena and not watching from the seats above.
Hmm.
And I'm a big advocate about living in the arena. So both the marathon for me was living in that arena. That was a really tough challenge. Not even so much the marathon itself. It was the training that led to the marathon that was challenging. I was prepared for the marathon, but the training was quite intense. And going through surrogacy and finding success was something that I can't really qualify or quantify. When our son Aiden was born, I stood there while they were weighing him and, those first rites of passage when they take their O2 and the blood, and he's just lying on this little table with the nurses taking all of these different measurements, and I am shaking and I pinch myself because I am so worried that I am dreaming. And the nurse looks at me and I guess she saw me pinch myself. And she said in the most maternal tone, "Sweetheart, he is real and he is yours." And I don't think I can compare the marathon to my children, because as much as living life in the arena and crossing that New York City finish line, having my children has been my greatest achievement by far. And the two really aren't something that I could compare.
I'd have to think that since you had given birth to your first child naturally and then had the next one as a surrogate, it would have been rather surreal being somebody standing to the side watching your child be born.
Yes.
I mean, there would almost be something that it would be almost like a dream that you're standing there watching it happen instead of feeling it happen, since you knew what that felt like.
Yes, it was exceptionally surreal watching. I was just so worried that something was going to go wrong. So much had gone wrong prior to Aiden's birth with that pregnancy. But, before we found Maureen, our carrier who carried Aiden and our twins, Rowan and Caleb, but so much could go wrong. And I was just wanting a healthy baby to be born. And when I saw his head crown, my husband Kenny was holding my shoulders, literally grounding me to the earth because I just couldn't get over that we were there watching our son being born. It was one of the hardest moments of my life in the most amazing way.
Once you actually got to hold him, how long was it before you'd put him down?
um, Actually, the nurses insisted that it's a little bit different care in the US because they have nurseries and they like to watch the babies so the mother can rest. And the hospital in Harrisburg where we had the babies, they were so phenomenal. They had given us a room. Our names were on the bracelets, something that we haven't spoken of. Like every state has different regulations and rules pertaining to surrogacy. So Pennsylvania, where they're born, is a very surrogacy friendly state. So our names were on the birth order prior to their birth. So the nurses and staff there, for the most part, they treated us like the parents, and they were wonderful to our carrier as well. But they didn't make us feel secondary. I felt like they recognized me as the mother.
Mm-hmm.
So just to answer your question, they said that it was best to let him stay in their nursery. They were going to give him a bath, things like that. So I reluctantly gave him up to that. And then they convinced us to go back to our hotel because that's where he was going to stay for the next few hours. Our hotel was directly across the street. I hadn't slept the night before at all. And we went back to the hotel, but we essentially packed everything up. And then we're back at the hospital before 7 just to be with him. And we were discharged within 24 hours. And our carrier was also discharged. She did unbelievable. And we were home within 24 hours back in Canada. I don't know what it would be like crossing the border now, but 22 years ago, it was okay. It was okay. And immigration, gave us no issue.
Wow, that's just amazing that you were back at home in 24 hours.
Yes.
That boggles the mind.
Yeah, that was a very surreal experience too, because once we landed in Canada and my dad came to pick us up at the airport, it was his first grandson, and just the joy that emanated from him that we had, struggled for so long. It was beautiful. It was a beautiful moment.
Oh, I can't even imagine that. That had to be just something that you never want to forget.
Yeah, it's one of those memories that's embedded in my mind.
So now is the part of the show that we like to do 5 quick questions that never turn out to be quick, but I just refuse to give up hope that it'll happen someday. Are you ready?
Yes, I am.
So question 1, what is your go-to snack food on a long day of riding or training to help pick you up?
So I'm thinking, because I have two things. I love an apple, a cut up Honeycrisp apple. So that's my healthy go-to snack. And then if I've had a real day, I will treat myself to some either wine gums or some sour jujubes, or I'll even go as far. There's a fabulous donut shop in Toronto that I'll go and buy myself a maple donut, which I'll indulge in and not share it with anybody.
Is it Tim Hortons?
It is not Tim Hortons. I'm not a big fan of Tim Hortons.
It's the only one I know, so.
Yeah, no, most people only know that. Yeah, Tim Hortons, in my opinion, does not make a good donut. But there are some like local donut shops that
Hmm.
that have really stepped up their donut game. I love a good donut. Just very simple, just like maple glaze, like nothing fancy, but that's doughy and just delicious. So yes, a good donut or a little bit of candy or Honeycrisp cut up apple.
See, now Honeycrisp I love, but I have to have almond butter with it.
Oh yeah, almond butter, that's a great addition. Sometimes there's some almond butter. There is. Absolutely.
I can't have peanut butter. It makes me start having breathing problems. So I have
Oh,
tons of almond butter in this house.
yes. Yeah, we're big almond butter eaters too. I love almond butter in my protein shakes actually.
Oh yeah, that's good.
Yeah, it just gives you that little hint of peanut butter, but it's not like peanut butter is very overpowering. Almond
Mhm.
butter is kind of like an undercurrent.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
yeah, I'm a big almond butter fan.
Now, question two. If money
Yes.
was no object and you could hop on a plane tomorrow, where would you go and why?
This is an easy question. I would go to Southeast Asia because my children are all exceptionally well traveled. They have all been. And one of my sons just got back from exchange, having gone to school in Singapore, but traveled like all over Thailand and Korea and the Philippines and Vietnam. And I cannot wait to get there. So if money wasn't an issue, that's exactly where I would go. I would love to just travel the various islands in the Philippines and see Thailand and go to Vietnam. I would just love that.
Yeah, I'm kind of jealous of your kids.
Yeah, I'm very jealous of my kids too. And that's honest.
I have been to Japan a long time
Right.
ago,
Right.
and my husband's been to China for work. I would love to go there.
Right. Well, three of my four kids have also been to Japan, and that's somewhere else I would love to go as well. But if I had to pick, I would pick Southeast Asia
That would be
right now.
amazing.
Yes, that would.
Now, question three. Do you have any quirky hobbies that you turn to when you need to unplug from the world?
I do actually. That's so funny. And I've never been asked that, and I'm happy to share. There's this free bingo app that, I don't have to put any money into it. But when I need to just stop thinking about everything that's going on, or I just need a break, I will play this bingo game on my phone. And I know that it is quirky and there's no money involved, but I love accumulating my gems and my tickets. And it for whatever it is, it actually really sometimes helps just ground me and allow me the space to not use my brain for anything other than keeping up with the numbers that are called.
Hmm.
And it allows me that like refuge.
That is so funny. I don't have like a bingo app, but what I have done is create bingo cards for different things. Like we go to Comic-Con quite often.
Right. Yes.
And
Yes.
I'll create a bingo card for, somebody in a red Star Trek uniform or somebody in Princess Leia. And, I'll create a bingo card and sit there and walk around the Comic-Con and mark these things off and see if I get bingo.
Right. Okay. So a fellow bingo aficionado. And the funniest thing is I'm not exactly sure why I love it so much, but it must be because I'm focused on getting the numbers and I play six cards at one time. So
Oh,
there's
wow.
really no time to think. I
Yeah.
just have to look and it serves its purpose. And all my kids know, when I'm playing bingo that I just need a second.
Hmm.
And or if they'll need something, I'll be like, I'm just in an important meeting, but they can hear the game because
Yeah.
obviously it can't be muted. And anyways, that is my quirky little habit.
I think that would be like a mental fidget spinner.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what it is, to be honest. It's just it's an allowance of freedom for my brain
Mm-hmm.
And, I imagine there's other things that I could do with that time, but I feel that it serves its purpose well.
Sometimes we need those distraction moments for our
Yes.
brain to reset so that we can go on and work.
Yes. I couldn't agree more.
So now question 4. What is one song or artist that you can listen to on repeat all day?
Sarah McLachlan.
Ah,
She's a Canadian artist. She's a singer-songwriter. She is so wonderful. I love her. I could listen to her music all day long. I'm also an avid Bruce Springsteen fan, but
mm-hmm.
I don't think I could listen to his music all day long, but I could listen to hers. And there's too many songs to name that have just held such meaning in my life
Mm-hmm.
that of hers, that Angel being one of them. She's a wonderful artist. I actually just sent her my book.
Oh, nice.
Yes, her agent couldn't have been more lovely. And I sent her agent and her a book. And my fingers are crossed that she gets it, because I just wanted to gift her with something that I created to thank her for everything that she's created that's had meaning for me.
I love that. That is so thoughtful.
Well, I hope she gets it. That's all.
Now, for question 5, I'm asking everyone the same one because I'm creating a recommendation list that's going to go in our year-end book buying guide for our authors to recommend books to our readers. So your question 5 is, if somebody asks you for a book recommendation, who is the first author you go to?
So is there a genre involved in this, or it could be anything?
Anything. Your favorite.
Hmm. Well, I have different favorite authors for different types of books. So I can give you a few. The first I think that comes to mind is Christian Hannah, because The Nightingale is probably my favorite book, if not top 3. Mitch Albom,
Mm-hmm.
who Tuesdays with Maury, I just found to be pivotal in the lessons learned from somebody who was older and, near end of life.
Mm-hmm.
Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning. It was an extremely meaningful book about how somebody lived through the Holocaust and was able to find resilience in living through hell and then becoming an aid to others who needed help with any struggle they were facing in life. And then I guess Brene Brown, also in that self-help lean. The Gifts of Imperfection. I just love that. And I could go on. Right now, I'm in like a fantasy spiral, and I'm loving Rebecca Yarros and Sarah Moss. So I'm very well read. I don't have a favorite type of book, but I love a good book.
Yeah, I'm with you there.
So the kind of book that you don't want to end, but you can't stop reading.
Mm-hmm. Those are some great suggestions. Thank you.
Thank you.
What is next for you? Are you going to do another book?
Oh, I'm asked that so much. I don't know. Part of me wants to yell yes. And part of me, I'm still so in love with the miles we run, and the marketing has been hard, but I'm enjoying it to a certain extent that I just feel like I've just started. So ultimately, I would like the miles we run to become a movie. So I'm pursuing that road right now, and I'll see what I can come up with. So I'm heavy into that. So I feel that if I start thinking about another project, then that will take away from the miles we run. And I'm not nearly done with it yet.
That makes absolute sense. You definitely want to be hitting on the opportunities for getting it into a movie form while the book is out and hot.
Yes, absolutely. So fingers crossed, Dianne.
Now, where can our listeners find you and your work?
They can find me at themileswerun.com. I have a great website. I have all my media appearances. I have all my podcasts. I'm so excited for Book Banter to be put up there. My book, The Miles We Run, is available wherever people buy their books. There's links from my site to purchase the book, but if you go on to where you buy books, you'll find it there too. And then if somebody's interested in the fitness component to what I do, absfitness.ca. Been helping women get stronger for years and years, and it's a great platform, doable, effective strength training workouts.
And of course, all of your information is going to be in the description of today's podcast and on our website at burckhartbooks.com/podcast. And you will be appearing in the year-end book buying guide that comes out in November.
Oh, yay. Thank you.
This has been so much fun. I swear I learned so much because I'm definitely one of those people that I know very little about surrogacy. So I'm really enjoying this conversation.
Oh,
I love
thank
learning
you.
about these things.
Thank you, Diane. And thank you so much for having me. I've loved this conversation too. And it's just been an honor to be on your show.
So there you have it, folks. My interview with the incredible Alison Beder Solway. She was such a delightful guest and just wonderful to speak with. Please go give her book a try. It is The Miles We Run, Lessons from the Arena of Resilience. She is an incredible person, and she is doing so much great work helping other people in her health business and with her advocacy. So be sure to go check out everything that she's doing. Now, next week, we will be joined by Marcia Peck. Marcia is an award-winning writer and accomplished musician who is celebrating more than 50 years as a cellist with the Minnesota Orchestra, and we will be discussing her debut novel, Water Music, A Cape Cod Story. Much of this story was inspired by her own experiences in Cape Cod, and we had a fantastic discussion about her music career and her debut novel. Now, as for Burckhardt Books information, if you are a fan of paranormal romance, you are going to love the first series that is going to be coming out from D.S. Stevens. We have got 7 books already outlined for the Haunted Heart series. It's going to be following a televised paranormal investigation show that the producer brings in a scientist to be the voice of reason to try and debunk all the things that are going on in their investigations, because the show's participants are all very much true believers. So they want to give a little bit of a scientific edge to everything. And of course, there's a little friction between the two main characters. So we follow along with that friends to lovers trope that is going to just be explosive, but turns out pretty nice in the end. Now, there's going to be 7 books in this series, and each one will be a different episode of the show where they investigate different actual haunted places. And for those of you who don't know, when I was in college in my 20s, I actually did paranormal investigations. And all of these places that these books are going to be based on are places that my friends and I actually went and investigated. So we're going to be using all of the notes from those experiences to help add a little bit of realism and actual historical information to this romance series. Now, if that's something that you're interested in, be sure to go sign up at burckhartbooks.com to our mailing list so you will be one of the first people to know when we have the first book ready for pre-order. Now, I'm sorry if you hear a little bit of background noise here, but it is 93 degrees here in Germany today. We have massive heat warnings going on. It is 33% humidity, and air conditioning is not a thing here. So I am sitting here in my little booth with a fan blowing on me because honestly, if I didn't, I wouldn't be able to sit here long enough to do this. So I'm going to go ahead and close this episode out and wish you all a wonderful Wednesday, and hope you come back next week for Marcia's interview. So you know what time it is, folks. It's time for you all to go forth and be really happy if you have air conditioning.